Hello there, children. This is Grandpa Joe again, and in this video, we're going to talk about good old school days and how I was integrated into a school of normal kids. So, when I first went to school, the first 3 years of school was at a public school, and I didn't go to kindergarten, so I went, directly to first grade. And I'm on the bus for the first time with normal kids, right? And so I'm a little skinny, scrawny, short kid, right? And most of the kids on the bus were, older, bigger kids. There was like a couple kids that were my age, but the majority of them were older kids. So, and they started calling me Shrimp. Well, I didn't know what a shrimp was, okay, and I didn't know what this was, but I knew that they weren't being nice. So wasn't real pleased with it. But to start off with, I didn't do anything, because I was shy, and I'd never been on a school bus before or whatever. But they kept picking on me, these bigger kids. And one of these kids, is a full head taller than I was. I mean, he was, maybe twice my size as far as weight and everything goes. So he's probably like, I think he's in fourth grade. So I'm a first grader, and this kid's got to be in the fourth grade. And he's calling me Shrimp, Shrimp, Shrimp. And we were, I think, exiting the school bus at school, right? So at least he was like, so he got a different stop than I did. So he got off first, and then the bus driver would take and drop us off. We were the last class, last group to get off the bus. So first it was like the seniors, or you mean the high schoolers, and then the middle schoolers, and then it was finally, the younger kids, right? And so he was getting off the bus, and I was sitting there, and he was like poking on my shoulder while he's waiting to get off, and he's like, Shrimp, Shrimp, Shrimp. This is it. Here's a shrimp, Shrimp, Shrimp. Something like that. And he was poking me on my shoulder. And so I'd had enough of this. And so I jumped up, and I had one foot on each across the aisle. So I had one foot on one side of the aisle and one foot on the other sid of the aisle, standing on the bus seats, and popped him in the mouth as hard as I could. Knocked out one of his teeth because I saw it fall out. And then apparently loosened another one. And immediately blood just started flying out of his mouth and just pouring out, and he starts bawling and just rushes past me and off the bus, right? And I remember looking out the window at him running to the one of the teachers, and by this point, blood is dripping off his elbow, just streaming blood. And I was very proud of myself, And then later on, this other kid, he's even bigger. Same thing, Shrimp, Shrimp, and I haul off and punch him, and I hit him and bloodied his mouth, his upper lip. I split his upper lip and bloodied his nose. And he started crying, whatever. And the mistake these kids made is that they didn't understand that I fought for fun from an infant. I fought a full-grown man. My dad weighed 230 pounds, and he beat the crap out of us every day, me and my sister. So I wasn't afraid of these kids on the bus. They couldn't hurt me. They, punch me or push me or whatever. And it's like, well, that's nothing. I've had way worse. So I wasn't afraid of them punching me or hitting me or anything. And I definitely was going to fight back. Just like I did with my dad. I nearly broke my dad's nose one time with a yardstick. He's chasing around with those stupid Hot Wheels race road tracks. So I got a yardstick and broke it over the bridge of his nose and nearly knocked him out. So I wasn't afraid of these kids on the school bus, not a bit. And so pretty quickly they settled down on that shrimp stuff. But this is first grade. I hadn't been on the school bus for more than a month, and I had already, beat up two kids, older kids, on the bus. right? And then finally, there was this girl, and she was in my grade. So, and her and another girl were sitting behind me, and they were mocking me. And the one girl was like, Joe's a shrimp, Joe's a shrimp. I don't know why they, picking up from the older kids or whatever. And I wasn't really trying to hurt her. I just wanted her to shut up. So I gave her a little backhand, a backhand little pop, just, like, shut up, like that. And as soon as I pulled my hand back, blood started streaming out of her nose. And I'm like, oh, crap. I just hit a girl. Oh, I'm in trouble now, And it's like, oh, God, hope nobody finds out. Well, the bus driver found out. And so he stops at the house and goes up and talks to my dad. And I'm sitting there, and he's like, hey, Mr. Hune, says, I'm having a little problem with your son here. He's been in some fights on the school bus, and he punched a couple of older boys, and that was picking on him. So I didn't really, they were bigger boys, and they shouldn't have been picking on him. So I kind of let that slide. He said, but, today he slapped this little girl here on the bus and bloodied her nose up, and I can't have that, on the bus. You need to talk to him and make sure that he doesn't do stuff like this. If he keeps on doing stuff like this, we're gonna, you're gonna have to drive him yourself to school, because I can't have him on the bus. And my dad, he's looking at me real stern, like, I was like, oh crap, man, I'm gonna get beat. This is gonna be bad. And then the bus driver leaves, right? And I go inside, and my dad's like slapping me on the shoulder, and is like, so you beat up, how many boys did you beat up? He's like, hey, what happened? He wanted me to tell the whole story. And the girl too, said, she said, would you hit this girl? And I said, I just, like this right here. Well, why'd you do that? And he's like, oh, she was calling me shrimp. And he's like, that's good for you, son. He was freaking proud of me for that. Okay. So the one time that I probably should have been punished, all right, for doing something bad to somebody, he was like proud of me. He was like, well, way to go, son. Slap that little girl in the face. It's like, what? Okay, but don't do that anymore now. If just don't do that to girls. Only do that to those boys. If they pick on you, then you can knock them out. You can hit them as hard as you want, but don't hit any little girls so you get in trouble. But I didn't get. No, he wasn't even like mad at me. I couldn't believe it. So that's how school started out. And I did actually really, really well in school, especially in math. So like when I went to second grade, they actually moved me up, which was a mistake. Okay, it was in the middle of the school year. Never move anybody in the middle of a school year, because our classes were already started. And so they moved me up math classes. So I went from second grade math class to third grade math class. And so I'm going in there, and these kids are learning multiplication, and I was just learning how to add and subtract, and they were already doing multiplication in the third grade and their times tables and stuff. So I was completely confused. I didn't know what was going on, and I was again, it's all older kids, and so they were, picking on me, and so I would be lashing out of them, and I spent a lot of time out in the hallway doing my work, and I, of course, I fell behind because, first of all, I had never been introduced to multiplication. They moved me right in the middle of the school year, and so I got, finally got moved back to my regular class, and everything was fine. But I was doing well in school. I didn't do too bad. And then, third grade, same. Then fourth grade through my freshman year of high school, we were in a private school, Calvary Christian School, and that was probably the best environment for me. It was a smaller school, and so, and a lot of kids of Christian parents. So that was good for me. I of course I did real well there, and tried to be a good student and to help out my classmates and stuff. Again, a little frustrating because there was a few girls that I liked, and I couldn't talk to them. I couldn't, the girl that I kissed on the neck. This was in at Calvary Christian School, right? But that was late, when I was like in the fifth or sixth grade, something like that. Probably later, like seventh grade. So, it was a good school, and learned a lot. But it was good that it was a small school because I wasn't really good at socializing, and so I was able to make a couple friends, and I had a best friend named John Moore, and me and him were tight. I mean, we did everything together. Where he was, I was. Where I was, he was. And always playing together. And but still, the way I was raised, rough and abusive. The one thing that I regret in my entire life, if I could only change one thing, it would be this instance. I can't remember what the circumstances were, but me and him were on recess somewhere, and we were playing. And as a joke, this is my twisted mentality, I hauled off and punched him in the stomach, and he folded over, and I started laughing at him. Right. Until he lifted up his head, and I could see that he was crying. And he was really, really hurt. I mean, not just because that I punched him in the stomach, but I was his best friend, and I had just punched him. He couldn't understand it. If there was one thing that I could take back, that would be it. As you can see, I regret it to this day. The only friend I had ever had, and my sick, twisted, messed up mind thought it would be a good idea to punch him in the stomach. So I don't think I'll ever get over it. Because looking in his eyes, I could see myself. I had done to him what my dad had done to me. And of course, I'm apologizing and telling him I'm sorry, and eventually he forgave me. But just the worst point in my life. Because of that was just how I was raised. That's how you showed affection. That's how you played with somebody, is you you abused them. If you really cared about them, you punch them in the stomach or slap them in the face. It was all in fun. So from then on, I never got in a fight, never hit anybody again. That was it for me. Even later on, I got in a little tussle wrestling match, and boy, I wanted to punch him, but I held back, and I tackled this guy and pinned him to the ground, but I didn't do anything else. But that was an issue with me. I was stronger than these kids. As I worked like a man, and I was much stronger than most of the other kids. And the other kids, like a kid named Sylvester, right? And he was a redneck. Okay, this was a a red-headed fisherman's son. Okay, and he had that slow southern drawl, talk like this, and he just a great guy though, really funny, and we played a lot with him too, and he had a problem. He was not good in school, right? And I remember that he would turn in his spelling test. He would just sign his name and turn it in blank, before the test even started. He would already have his name on a piece of paper, and he would just, as soon as the thing would start, he'd just hand that blank piece of paper in, and he's not even gonna try. And he's getting zeros, And I asked him, I said, why do you just do that? And he's like, well, I can't, learn those words and that stuff. I'm not good at that, so I'm not even going to try. And I was like, Sylvester, you're not stupid. I said, you just need to learn how to learn, You'll need to learn how to study. And I said, I'll help you out. I said, I promise you. I said, you'll get 100 on those tests. And so I showed him how I studied. You write each word out, 3 times, and you spell them out verbally as you're writing them down, right? And then you need somebody to practice with you, somebody to tell you the word, and then you spell it, and tell them, don't correct me until I finish the whole word, and then you tell me how to spell it, and then I'll spell it the right way. Okay, a couple times before we move on to the next one. I said, if you do that, I said, get your mom or somebody to do that with you, and that's it. You'll get it. And sure enough, I helped him out, and I would practice with him. And all of a sudden, Sylvester's making hundreds on these spelling tests. He's like, he's doing better than me, So all the teacher's like, what the heck is this? And he's like, Sylvester with 100 here. And it's like, everybody was applauding him and everything, and that's what, really got him going then. It's like, well, holy crap. He's like, everybody's clapping for me and stuff. I'm getting all this attention for doing well, instead of everybody laughing at me for just turning in this blank sheet of paper. But, so I had one best friend, and I got along pretty much with everybody else at school, and just like any other kid, there's some people you don't like, but I did really well in school. And this one particular class was a history class. I remember this, and the way the teacher did it was she would always have you read the chapter and then answer all the questions in the book. And then whenever you would do a test, half the questions would be from the questions that were in the book, and then half would be from other parts of the reading material. So she wanted you to read it, so you couldn't just answer the question, go to the end, find the questions, and answer them all, right? That wasn't going to work. You had to actually read the text in order to do well on tests. But me and John, we were, was talking and said, hey, listen, why don't we work on this together and just answer all the questions? Just get it out of the way. I said, I'll take the odd ones and you take the even ones. And we'll just answer all the questions in the entire book. And then we'll, compare books, and That way we'll have all the answers. And basically we just went into the books and we'd circle in the text the answer and put the number of the question, right? So that's what we did. So we went through the whole book, answered every question, and read the whole book, right? And so we go to class, and this was like the third week of the class, right? So in 3 weeks, we had completed all the course material. And so, like the third week, I asked the teacher, I said, hey, Mrs. Brennan. I said, Miss Brennan, is it okay if me and John play some chess? And she goes, of course not. And I said, well, we're finished with the work. And she goes, well, then go on to the next chapter. And I said, no, I don't think you understand. We're done with all the questions. And she goes, so you've gone through, she's real smirky, So you've answered all the questions in the book? And I'm like, yes, ma'am. We have gone through the entire book and we have answered all the questions. And so I said, here, let me show you. And so we brought our books up there and showed her, that we had went through the whole book. And she's like, well, I guess you can. I mean, you guys have read everything? I was like, yeah, we read through the whole book and, we done everything. She goes, okay, well, I guess that's all right then. So if you got a chessboard, just be quiet and, and don't get too loud, and that'll be fine. So we kind of sit over to the side. There was like a main row of chairs against this long wall that were facing, towards the other side of the room where the teacher was. And then back in the corner next to the door to go, there's another 2 doors, the exterior door and then the interior door. And the interior door, there was a little, we were in a group of chairs against that wall. So it was me, John, and a couple other kids, and that was it. And so we sat over there and played chess, just every day we'd come in, we'd play chess or whatever. And then some days I'd ask her, we'd go out and play ping pong. So we'd go out, not even in classroom anymore. We'd go out in the hall there, the what do you call it, the cafeteria, and play ping pong, right? Now we tried to go and play basketball, but we weren't allowed to do. She was afraid that other teachers would see us, so we weren't allowed to do that. But we could go and play ping pong, and we can play chess, right? And boy, did that made the other kids mad. And one of the kids in the classroom was her nephew, right? And so he was complaining because we were over there talking and playing chess, and he was yakking to some girl or whatever, and she called him out, told him to shut up, and then he points over at us, and she's like, he says, well, how come you don't ever say anything to them? They're sitting there, they've been talking the whole class. And so they ain't even working. So they're over there playing games. And why don't you tell them to shut up? Why don't you always picking on us? You don't say anything to them. He says, well, David, if you finish all the work in the book, then you can go over there and play chess with them. So finish your work and you can go over there too. And, that was into that because he wasn't going to do it. But, did real good in school up until the last year that we were there, because they changed systems. So before it was a regular classroom with teachers and regular curriculum. And then the last year, I guess the amount of students had fallen off, or they didn't have enough money anymore. There was a scandal at the church with the pastor cheating with the piano player or something, and so things weren't going good at the church. And a lot of people stopped, going to, it broke the church up. And so they were short of funds. And so they went to a learn at your own pace type of curriculum, which means that there are no teachers, they're just babysitters. And then you have these booklets that the students, work through themselves, right? And it had to be in my freshman year where, we're having Algebra 1. Okay. So these books, first of all, were horrible. And this was the first time that I'd ever worked with these, right? So I didn't know how these things worked or whatever. And what made it worse is there was nobody to ask questions. Like there'd be some complicated problem in the book, and I was didn't know how to figure out what to do. And the teacher there wasn't a teacher, as a babysitter, and knew nothing about algebra. So I couldn't ask them anything. And so instead, she said, send me to the principal. And I talked to the principal about it. And he's like, well, we don't really have the staff for it. Said, so just, do the best you can and we'll make sure that you pass. And I was like, what? But I'm not learning. What happens next year? And I don't know algebra. And now I'm going on to Algebra 2. No, I need somebody to help me. And he's like, well, we don't really have anybody, I'm sorry, but, just do the best you can. So, yeah, that wasn't good. So that whole year, I basically spent my time shooting staples into the ceiling. It was boring. The books were, all of them except algebra were like, super easy, fill in the blank kind of crap. It was a joke. And so, I'd do all my booklets and just be sitting there, like I said, shooting staples into the ceiling. And the only fun I had was there's these two guys that were, in like a 10th and 11th grade. And we had a science lab, like a portable science lab with all these chemicals and stuff. And they would all the time have these experiments that they had to do, right? And they weren't doing anything in the books. They were just over there throwing crap together. So it was fun to sit back there with them. Because I was in charge of the chemistry lab, right? So I had the keys. So I would open up the cabinets and let these guys get at these chemicals. And they would just mix the stuff together and make it all kinds of... It's a wonder they didn't kill everybody in the classroom. With all the crap that they were doing. They were just basically trying to create different colors of smoke. And I remember this one time, they had this giant test tube. They had poured, I don't know, all kinds of crazy stuff. And there was this one chemical that I never let them use because it was like, super dangerous, right? Toxic, poisonous. And so I never let them get at it. And so they went to the teacher and says, hey, Joe won't let us use this thing. We need to have this thing for our experiment, And he says he won't let us have it, because I knew what they were doing. And she goes, Joe, let them get that bottle or whatever it is they want to do so they can, finish their work. And I'm like, are you sure about that? And they're like, yeah, go ahead. And so they took this thing and poured it in there, and they started shaking it up. And man, it was turning all kinds of fancy colors and doing all kinds of crazy stuff, in this chemical reaction. And they were holding it by the, it was a long test tube, and they were holding it by the top, and they were looking at it, wow, And then finally, it was getting hotter and hotter. So the guy that was holding it handed it to the other guy. Said, here, take it. It's getting hot. Well, there was no place to grab this thing except lower down the test tube, right? So as soon as that guy grabbed it, he's like, oh, it's hot, and he was like, and it was starting to smoke up and bubbling, and he's like, open the door. So he ran over, opened the door, and he threw this thing like a hand grenade out into the street, and this thing just kaboom blew up. This big explosion. And the teacher, everybody jumped up, and the teacher like, and says, "Oh my God, what was that?" And you're like, "Oh, it was a car backfired." Car backfired. That's all it was. Everything's okay. And, there was these shrubs outside. There's, of course, you go out the door, and there's a sidewalk, and then there's some shrubs. And they would take and pour their failed experiments out on these shrubs. So it's like the last 6 shrubs in that row were completely dead, and these stupid people didn't have enough sense to know what was going on. And they were, well, their question is like, "Wow, this is what." So what? All these other shrubs are doing good except these last six. I wonder what's going on with them. And it's like, I know what's going on with them. These guys are pouring out chemicals over them just about every other day. Maybe that's it. So anyway, unproductive, but nonetheless fun. And then we moved to Georgia after that, or North Carolina after that. And that was an experience because that was my first experience in a. Hold on a second. So, North Carolina, beginning of the school year, so that wasn't terrible. We start school in North Carolina. Now, what was bad is that they had a fixed curriculum. So, when I started school, I wanted to take Algebra 1 again, right? Because I didn't learn any algebra. And they said, well, no, can't do that. Said, you're a sophomore. Sophomores in the college curriculum are required to take geometry. And it's like, well, I need algebra to use in geometry. So if I don't understand algebra and can't do that, how am I going to solve these geometry problems? So, well, I'm sorry, I mean, that's state curriculum, so you're going to have to go into geometry. So that was pretty upsetting, and I of course had no idea what the hell they were talking about when I'm in the classroom, and so very uncomfortable as far as math goes. But every other class is just the same, no whoop-de-doo. But I was really concerned about the geometry. And so, first time in a public school and first time on a public school bus since I was in second grade, right? A little different environment. So, not only that, I'm a guy from Florida, and this is a deep woods Appalachian type environment, right? So these kids looking at me like I'm from frickin' Mars, I talk funny and dress funny and the whole thing, So like, who is this character, right? So immediately they got to test me, right? So there's one of the kids up there, and he comes up there and he's like, "Where are you from?" All this, I want to know everything about me, and everybody's staring at me, like again, like I'm from Mars. And so anyways, he's wanted to check me out and ask me all these questions and ask me, so say, "You think you're tough? You getting any fights?" I said, I said, "Well, no, not really. I don't try not to get in fights." And he's like, "You think you're a tough guy or something?" Like, I don't know where this is coming from, but he's trying to pick a fight, and it's like, I wouldn't fight with him. And he's like, he says, I said, "You think you're strong? You think you're tough?" And I was like, "No, I don't think I'm, tough. I'm just a regular guy." And he says, "Hey," he says, let's arm wrestle. Let's see who's the strongest here, So remember now, I'd been working construction, and stronger than just anybody that I had met before as far as my age. And so arm wrestle, and I just put him down, And he's like, "Well, wait a minute, that's started making excuses." It's like I wasn't, something, I wasn't ready. My thumb was twisted or whatever, Let's do that again, Put him down, and he's like, "Holy crap!" He says, "You're stronger than I thought you would be." And then he gets this other guy. So there's this other big muscly guy, that's older and big. This guy was like 6'1", and definitely a football player, right? So he tells him, "Hey, come over here." He says, "Arm wrestle this guy." He says, "He's pretty strong. Let's see if he's stronger than you." So he brings that guy over there, and this was a lot more of a struggle, but I put him down too. And he's like, "Holy crap, I didn't think you'd be able to beat him. Gosh dang." He says, "You're really strong." And he's like, "You're all right, you're all right, guy, you're all right." And so I was like, "Okay, well, I guess I'm accepted now." But I never felt fit in there. Still always the odd man out, and they just I could hear back there whispering about me and stuff. But whatever, at that point, I was pretty much seared emotionally, right? So I didn't care what anybody thought about me, and whatever. I just tried to not get hassled, right? So fairly uneventful, but it was it was fun. I was able to make some acquaintances, I guess. But going to school now, the first week, that guy tested me out. Well, he wasn't the only one. So I'm going to school, and it's on lunch break or something like that, and I got no friends. I don't know anybody. No place to go. And so there was this little overhang with like a bench under it, right? So I went over and sat under this thing. It's kind of like almost like a cave kind of thing, it was like completely surrounded, right? And this little insert into this, stairwell or whatever. And so kind of real shady. So I go and sit underneath there, and all of a sudden these other two boys start walking up, and he's like, "Hey, you new kid here, and it's like, "Where are you from?" and all this kind of stuff like that, And so he comes over there, and they sit on either side of me, right? And one guy's doing all the talking, the other one's just sitting there. And he pulls out this knife. And he goes, "You a city slicker from Florida, ain't you?" And I was like, "Well, I'm from Florida, but, my family were farmers, so I wouldn't say I'm a city slicker." And he says, "Oh, you think you smart, huh? You think you're better than us country folk or whatever like that?" And I'm like, "No, not at all. Like I said, my family were farmers, so, I'm not a city slicker, And he takes this knife out, and he says, "What if I just stuck you with this knife? What would you do? Would you go run and tell the teacher? Are you a tattletale? You a wussy boy?" And I'm like, "No, not a wuss, and I wouldn't go tell the teachers, And so he takes and he sticks the knife, he doesn't stab me, but he sticks it like so it's touching my leg. And he goes, "Is that so?" Says, "You ain't a wussy boy." And he says, "Well, let's find out." And he just starts shoving the knife into my pants, and I'm just staring at him, while he's doing this. I'm not trying to stop him. I'm not, just go ahead, stab away. And he's looking at me puzzled, because he's stuck that knife about a half an inch into my leg by now, And then he pulls it out, and he's like, "Yeah, so I guess you're okay. We're going to let you slide." Said, "But, you need to be careful there, city boy." And walks away, but it was pretty clear to him that I wasn't flinching. He wasn't. There was nothing that he could do with or without that knife that was going to intimidate or scare me in any way. So I guess I had passed the test, and then everybody left me alone after that. And just as I was starting to get into the swing of things, and we moved from North Carolina to Georgia. Now it's right in the middle of the school year. So we moved to Georgia, whole new group of kids and all this new, on the new kid on the bus again, the whole spiel all over again, and everybody wanting to test you and all this stuff. And now I'm from Murphy, which is their rival, right? So I'm instantly an evil guy. Well, let me go back. One of the things in North Carolina was, there's hills everywhere, and there's paths all throughout those hills from old logging trails and stuff where loggers would go in and pull out trees, and just bike paths, like motorcycle paths where people ride their motorcycles through, all through those hills. And so I would take my bicycle and go riding up there. Well, I basically have to, carry my bike up the mountain. Then I would, ride it down and, just exploring. And one day I was following this trail down, and I was just, flying down through this trail. And I could see that it was coming out in this backyard of this house, right? And I'm like, oh, crap, So I just gassed it up. I went full speed, as pedaling downhill as fast as I could through this, ravine type thing, and got out into the yard and just kept on pedaling as fast as I could, and just blazed out the yard and down the road as fast as I could. And so I'm, pretty good ways down the road, and I can see look behind me, and there's this person on a motorcycle coming. I'm like, oh, crap. Here's this guy on this motorcycle. I came down in his yard. He's going to be all pissed off, mad at me. And so he catches up with me, and he's like flagging me down, But I didn't look like he was mad. So I was like, I pulled over, and he said, did you come down the path behind my house? Was that you? And I'm like, yes, I'm real sorry about that. I mean, I didn't know where it came out, and I'm sorry if I, messed up anything. I didn't mean to, hurt anything or whatever. And he said, no, that's no big deal. He said, no problem. It's just, you came down that on your bicycle? And I'm like, yeah. And he said, how did you get up there? And I was like, well, I carried my bike up the hill on the other side and just riding it down. And he goes, where are you from? He's always asking me questions, And it's like, he says, he told me that he went to school in Blairsville, right, in Georgia. And it's like, oh, okay, so that's. I said, I haven't seen you in school because you go to Murphy, and I'm like, yeah, and he goes, yeah, I go to Blairsville, and said, my mom and dad drive me down to the state line, and then I get on the bus there. He says it's a better school. I like it better over there. So anyway, and then he says, I got to go to the store. It's nice meeting you. And maybe we can, go riding together sometime, I said, do you have a motorcycle? I'm like, no, I just get the bicycle. And he's like, well, maybe we can get together and do something. And then that was it, right? And then here I am in Georgia. And go to register and all that stuff. And I still have to, I asked him, I want to try to go into algebra. Can I get into algebra 1? And it was like, no. I said, you transferred from the other school. You were in geometry there, you got to take geometry here. And I'm like, oh, man. He's like, I don't know algebra. I tried to explain it to him, the school and everything. And it's like, they wouldn't listen. It's like, you're going to have to take geometry, stay in geometry. I was like, I'm failing geometry, And so, anyway, go to geometry class. And, I was like, oh, God, it's an ordeal. And there's these two guys there, and these are big dudes, right? So, and they were obviously friends. And the teacher set me in this desk right next to him, right? So I'm like the new kid, and I'm in this, desk next to the teacher like I'm being punished. And it's like, oh, this sucks. And so he's like, one of the guys, they turn around and say, hey, I said, who are you? And it's like, oh, I'm Joe. I come from, says, I'm transferred from North Carolina. I said, but I'm really from Florida. And he's like, oh, wow, And he said, well, where are you from? I said, I was actually born in Kokomo, Indiana. And they're like, Kokomo? And I'm like, yeah, it says an Indian word. And they looked at each other and smiled. And they go up for the high five. And both of them, like in unison, they go, Kokomo Joe, like that. And they turn around, they point at me and said, that's your name from now on. You are Kokomo Joe. And I'm like, all right, so maybe this won't be so bad. So now I'm friends with the second string quarterback and one of the linebackers of the football team, right? And they're going to introduce me around to some of the other guys. And so we go to some kind of break or whatever. So we go out into the gymnasium. That's where everybody hangs out. And it's, hey, we want to introduce you to Bobby and Bert, these two of the guys. And so Bert comes up, introduced to him, again, big, beefy football player. And then here comes Bobby, and he comes up and they're like, hey, Bobby, meet this Joe, this Kokomo Joe. And he comes over and looks at me and he goes, that's the guy. And they're like, what? He goes, that's the guy. That's the guy I was telling you about. And he goes, they're like, what do you mean? He says, remember when I told you about the guy that came down behind my house with the bicycle? And he goes, yeah. He says, well, that's him. And they're like, what? Whoa. It's like, so you riding down those trails on your bicycle? And I'm like, yeah, man, I don't have a motorcycle. That's all I had. And it's like, how in the hell did you ride your bike, down those trails? And said, we can't get up there with a motorcycle. It's like, how the heck are you riding those trails on a bike? And I'm like, well, yeah, that's all I had. So, that turned out to be, pretty good times there in Georgia. And I'll talk some more about it in the next video. But we'll talk about the high school and then the college years in the next video.